15 seconds.
Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah. How you doing? Taco Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. 234 days into the new year, just 131 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California, and I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right, tonight, very special guest, Dr. Robert Schoch is here. That's right, the good doctor. We're going to do a complete update on Egypt tonight. Lots of stuff to talk about. He's also got a trip. He's going back out and heading up a tour. 2019, I think it's July. We'll find out about that tonight. I would love to go to Egypt with Dr. Robert Schoch. Could you imagine what that tour would be like? Any tour with the good doctor would be amazing. But we've got the new chamber above the Grand Gallery. We've got the second Sphinx discovery. And now we've got a few different versions of the second Sphinx, right? We've got Luxor, we've got Giza. We're going to be talking about all of that tonight. We have the EM testing that was done on the Great Pyramid and that white paper that was published last month. We're going to go over that too as well. There's a new museum that is opening up at Giza, the Grand Egyptian Museum. I think that's what they're calling it, the Grand. Yeah, I do believe so. And all that and much more. So stay tuned for that. That'll be at the bottom of the hour. Dr. Robert Schoch. Love it when he's on the show. And do you remember? I'm going to ask him about this tonight. He's probably listening right now. That'll blow it. Anyway. Do you remember back the first time that we had him on the show? There was two things. Now, this is 5 years ago, so it's going back a ways. But two things happened during that show. One, he had me all nervous. And I said, hey, should I call you doctor? Right? And he was like, yeah, man, you're going to call me doctor, little man. I said, okay, man. Yeah, there was that. All right. So now I just call him Robert. But there was a second thing that has come up so often on this show, which was I tried to find out what happened when he slept in the sarcophagus in the king's chamber. Went all night, right, by himself, and he wouldn't divulge. I think I'm gonna take another crack at that tonight. See what happens. He's probably gonna laugh me off again. Little man, I don't have to answer that. I don't have to answer. Awesome shirt alert. You guys like the shirt? That's cool. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. And you can see Sarah Ann's tweet right there. Awesome shirt, dude. Thank you. You know what? That's going to get a retweet. I'm going to retweet that, Sarah, because that's just an awesome tweet. Or did you not tweet that? Wait a minute. Is that? Oh, that is her tweet. Okay. You guys are funny. All right. Enough of that. I could just sit and talk about Twitter all night long. I should do that one night. Just a straight Twitter night. No guests, no nothing. Just myself and you guys on Twitter. Not the chat rooms. Ignore it. Just Twitter and me. I would love that. That would be a fun night. Rita, let's do a Twitter night. Just me and Twitter. No guests. I think we can book that guest. Have you been over to OnStellar? OnStellar.com. OnStellar.com. Yes, Jimmy. Yeah, Twitter night. You guys agree with that? Are you guys down for a Twitter night? That would be fun. I think so. Just Twitter. Little ask me anything on Twitter, and we could just goof around back and forth. Just do a Twitter night. That'd be really, really cool. All right. You know what? I'm going to do that. We'll do that. Man, we've already got next week booked. If we have an empty day next week, if we have something we can move around, Rita, let's do a Twitter night. Just Twitter. All right. Does the SRV on the guitar behind you stand for Stevie Ray Vaughan? Yes, it does. You're talking about that one right there. Yes. Stevie Ray Vaughan. And if you look, the guitar strap stands for Fade to Black. Yeah. You like that? Where am I at? Facebook, YouTube. Man, YouTube giving me hassles again, just to let you guys know. Go for a Twitter night. You guys are down. You guys are down for Twitter night. Okay. All right. Keep it up. I want to see enough of your support here. We'll do it. We'll do it next week. I think we can pull that off. Okay. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everything is Jimmy Church. Go find it. Go follow, like, and subscribe. But OnStellar is the place to be. OnStellar is unbelievable. I'm going to give everybody the heads up. I had kind of forgotten about this, but you need to get over to OnStellar, get registered now. There's a few things that are going to happen. But one of them that is getting ready to launch is we've got a total site overhaul that's going to happen. Yeah. And I can't divulge any more than that. But let me just say, it looks amazing. Okay? All right. Let's continue on. Got a lot to do here tonight. Robert Schoch is here. One of not only my favorite guests, but just such a leader in this community. And I say it every time he's on the show. It's rare that we all have dreams when we're a kid. We're gonna be king of the world, right? We're gonna have our own castle. We're gonna just change things. We're gonna change things. Well, and those are the dreams, right? And we all have those growing up. But Robert changed the world, along with John Anthony West. Changed. That's a rare thing. It's one thing to have the dreams. It's another thing to actually do it. Well, he did. And he's our guest tonight. I cannot wait for it. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I had a bunch of breaking news today, and I got a little swallowed up in a bunch of stuff. And the other things that were going on today in the political world, it was a bit too much to handle. You couldn't escape it on any of the mainstream media. And, of course, I'm talking about Manafort and Cohen, what's going down with those two dudes. And it went down at the same time, too. Timing was strange. But that quickly took over everything else, and I got a little sidetracked, not with them, but with other stuff here in the bunker. And so I'll talk about this a little bit later, but what I am going to talk about here in just a second is our universe, because lost today in all of the political conspiracy, news that is overwhelming everything, was a very interesting story today that on any other day would have been the biggest news of the day. Okay, so I'll talk about that in just a second. But for now, let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today. System of a Down frontman Serge Tankian is 51 years old. One of my favorite bands. And not only because the music is great, but they're from right here in beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I'll never forget, back in the 90s, I'm not too sure when it was, but I'm going to say mid to late 90s, 98, 99, 97, 98, 99. I wake up, turn on the TV, and I had heard the day before that System of a Down was going to play a free concert in Hollywood. And I thought, how can anybody, especially a band like System of a Down, go and just play a free concert on Hollywood Boulevard, right? I mean, you're just asking for trouble. And it went down, man, live on TV, a riot. A riot. And in the middle of the day, too, they were going to play. It was crazy. They were going to play at like noon in the middle of the day on Hollywood Boulevard. And I just thought, what could go wrong there, right? And it did, man. Helicopters, and they tore the stage apart, and something I mean, System of a Down was like, you know what, we don't have security. And that was the crazy thing. If you're going to go and set up for something like that, you better be ready, right? And they weren't expecting the turnout, which is what happens. Thousands, right, showed up. It was crazy. System of a Down said, you know what, we're not going to play. Well, that was the second mistake. There wasn't enough security there. And I think everybody in that crowd made off with a piece of the band's gear. Right? Oh, man, it was nuts. It was nuts. You guys should post that up on Twitter. So now, that to me, System of a Down got their original gangsta stripes on that day. I've just been a fan ever since System of a Down. If you guys got pictures or video, you're out there searching the web right now, of that concert in Hollywood, you should post it up on Twitter. It was crazy, man. It was crazy. I watched that live on TV for like 2 hours. It was some of the best reality TV I'd seen in a long time. System of a Down. On this day in history, 1911, the theft of the Mona Lisa. That's right. Well, the theft happened they suspect the day before, all right? So on this day, on the 21st, it might have been the 20th. They're not exactly sure. But an amateur painter sets up his easel near Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa in the Louvre in Paris. So he's setting up, and he knows the Mona Lisa's right here, right? It's like right here, and he's setting up his easel. And then, he gets out his paint stuff, and he looks, and the painting's gone. He's like, holy crap, the Mona Lisa's gone. Poof. It was there. It's got the dust print, right? Blank spot. Well, the day before, and perhaps in one of the most, brazen art theft attempts of all time, Vincenzo Peruggia pulled it off. He walked into the Louvre, took the painting off of the wall, stuck it in his jacket, I'm not making this up, and walked out of the Louvre with the Mona Lisa. I swear. That's how it happened. And he escaped. That's right. 2 years later, he got caught when he was trying to collect ransom for the painting to return it to Italy. That's it. He got caught. The Louvre got the painting back. That happened on this day in 1911. Fader fact. This is vetted, almost as good as yesterday's Fader fact. I don't know. This one may be better. Rita, we need to research this one just a little bit. But I vetted it today. 1 in 3 divorce filings, 1 in 3, include the word Facebook. That's right. 1 in 3. There you go. Thought you'd like that. Tonight, we have very special guest. Dr. Robert Schoch is here. We're going to do a complete update on all the news in Egypt, and no telling where the conversation is going to go because it is Dr. Robert Schoch, and this is Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Richard Bleepin Dolan is here. And once again, Richard's here. Hold on. We just don't know what's going to happen there, but there's a lot of things that are going on with the UFO community right now. And that's when you bring in the one and only Richard Bleepin Dolan to set it all straight. So that's tomorrow night. Thursday night is another Fader night with John Rappaport, and there's No More Fake Newsroom Live, followed by Open Lines all night long. All right. Today, in all this craziness of the news, all this craziness going down, Cohen this, Manafort that, oh, man. All right. Buried in the news story today was a really cool article about a second universe. That's right. Second. Evidence of a second universe. One before our universe. Right? Now, hold on, kids. That's a huge story. And so I'm going to talk about this probably for the next month. And part of that story today, as I was reading through it, a few glaring things stuck out for me. I'm not a physicist. I'm getting close, though. I'm not a physicist. I read, and the documentaries that I go through with physicists and reading, their reports and papers. And, it seems like that's all I do these days, right? Well, there's a few things that kind of stuck out for me. And I am going to, through my research and what I have read and what has taken my thought pattern in a direction, it's now conflicting with the conflicting stuff that is going on inside of the professional community when it comes to science and physics and the universe and the history of the universe. Again, I'm not a physicist, but I've got a grip. I do. So years ago, let's go back 25, 30 years, maybe a little longer, when these stories about the expanding universe and the Big Bang Theory started to really take hold. One of the theories proposed and nearly accepted, and still it's a part of the community today, is that the universe is cyclical. It expands, it contracts, goes back to nothing, another big bang, everything starts over again, expands till it can't expand anymore, and we're in the middle of one of these cycles. That's one. Now, I've got a problem with that. If you go back to the Big Bang, and one of the thoughts that everybody has, well, how could it start with absolutely nothing and everything is compressed into a little bit of nothing until it can't compress anymore, then boom, and it blows up, and then everything that is right now started from that. Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, in that there's no dirt in there, there's no gold in there, there's no water in there, there's no part. That's not what's there. What's there is energy, pure energy. And the energy, this is before everything is made, is what caused the Big Bang, boom, and it's just energy. That's all it is. So over time and early on, the first 500,000 years of the universe after the Big Bang, all of these energy particles are out flying around. They eventually collide with each other and combine, and eventually then stars and eventually gases and things are formed. But all of it is not compressed. There's no dirt and water and iron and copper and diamonds and carbon and no, it was just energy that blew up. The energy eventually combined, hitting itself into other particles, and it happened over time. Okay, and that's the Big Bang. I'm not a physicist, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So there's that. And then the universe formed. I can go with that. What I can't go with is the reversal. Let me explain. Because one of the reasons why the reversal can't happen, I'm talking about, it expands and then it goes to a certain point and then will collapse, is dark matter. There are forces out there, one of them being dark matter and, of course, gravity. That's another thing. That is pushing the universe apart and will continue. The reason why it hasn't collapsed back on itself is because there are forces that are forcing it in the other direction. I'm almost of the opinion that it's going to continue going that way and it's not going to reverse back on itself. But one of the reasons why it can't and it won't is dark matter. There is a lot of space out there, and I'm talking about space in between objects. There is a lot of dark matter. There's as much dark matter out there as there is matter. Okay, and it's just not going to happen. It's not going to compress back on itself. It may stabilize, right, where it gets to the equilibrium of the dark matter and matter equalizing on itself, and I can see that. But totally reversing itself, no, because it's forcing itself out. There isn't enough resistance out there on the outside of the universe to stop it, and we're going to continue to expand. But there may be an equilibrium point. But will it turn around and dark matter suddenly changes its mind, right? It doesn't want to resist, and it's just going to allow the universe to collapse back on itself? No, it's not going to happen. So there's that. And I'm not a physicist, but it just makes sense to me. Okay? And then there is this. Just like the thoughts you had when you were a kid about the Big Bang and how could it be possible that everything that there is, like the planet Earth, could just compress into just little, and all the other planets and all the other stars and just the universe and just collapse into just something that is just this big, that is the size of nothing, and then all of a sudden it blows up again? No, because now the reason why is all that was created the first time around from energy and all the matter that is around us is now created just because a physicist wants to say that it's reversing and it's going to collapse back. No, now we're talking about reversing all of those processes that got us here. That's a whole different situation. One direction, almost like chaos or entropy, right? Where everything is being created, but you can't uncreate it. It's like cracking an egg. You crack an egg, it's cracked. You can't reverse it. You can't unscramble an egg. You can't do it. So it's the same idea here. I don't see this process, but yet in this article today, there are 2, 3, 4 sides of the scientific community that are actually fighting and arguing about this. And I don't care what the math says. You can't undo everything. It just doesn't make sense. You cannot compress. If you take out all the space of all of everything in between all of the atoms, I get that. Oh, man, well, the Empire State Building, you take out all the thing, it'll fit into, okay, I get that idea. But if you take the entire universe and all of the matter of everything that is not going to compress down into a sugar cube. It's not. It's going to be humongo. You're not going to be able to reverse those processes unless you're talking about a total breakdown of everything. I just don't see it. I don't see it that way. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. So that's me. And the scientific community is arguing about it. And it's a big deal. And it's a big argument. And today it was out there and it was in the news. Totally overshadowed by the BS that is going down in Washington. Back to my point on all of this. We have so many important things that need to be discussed, and we must figure these things out. But apparently, this BS going down in Washington is more important than the future of humanity or where we came from. And apparently, the news thinks so. And it really bothers me. I went through today, I'm not going to bore anybody with any of it, but, I went through headlines today, and I'm looking through, and the reason why I did it is because I see this amazing article on the universe, and I just thought to myself, what is it that the mainstream media is pushing down everybody's throats? And I went and looked at the headlines, and I was blown away by the nonsense that is there. Utter nonsense. And you go to one website, and it's one set of opinions and nonsense, which is apparently the most important news in the history of man. You go to another website, it doesn't have anything that this first website has, but they have their opinions and what is the most important news of the day over here. And I went to a third one, and I'm reading through, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I just couldn't believe it. And here we have something that needs to be fundamentally addressed and figured out. Where did we come from? Where are we going? Right? And it's right there. And they're making valid arguments on both sides. Totally lost in the news. Will be off of all of the websites tomorrow. And it's like falling on my shoulders, which is fine. But and shoulders like mine, I should say, to keep this out there and to have it discussed. It's unbelievable to me. All right. And that's why we've got Robert Schoch on the show tonight. So let me get out of here. Let's get straight to Robert Schoch. All of the news that is Egypt, right? We had Alexandria and which with the sarcophagus. We have the Grand Gallery and the new chamber that was discovered. We've got the EM studies that just came out of Egypt about the Great Pyramid. All huge stories buried. Right, buried. We will do all of that tonight. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And before I do this, we are good there on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. If you want to hang out, we've got 2 chat rooms, one on Spreaker, one at KGRA The Planet. We have Twitter, #If2B is the sandbox. It's Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with me. I'll be right back after this short message.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Gobekli Tepe.
What can I say about the most popular tea on the internet? And what do customers say about Life Change Tea at getthetea.com? A lot. But by federal law, we at getthetea.com cannot make claims to how this product can enhance your health. We cannot even post our testimonies without being in compliance. So how do we get past the hump? Try our products at getthetea.com and see for yourself. You can send us a testimony, but we just can't post it. Bummer. Our products are GMO-free and organic. We pride ourselves in being the best we can be, and we urge you to take charge of your health. We're 11 years strong, and many of our customers have shared their successes with friends and family. Protect your colon. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. Getthetea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. On the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Tonight, Robert Schoch is back with us. And this segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by Life Change Tea. Head over to the banners at jimmychurchradio.com. Click. Use the promo code FADER, F-A-D-E-R. You will get free shipping. Dr. Robert M. Schoch, full-time faculty member at the College of General Studies of Boston University since 1984. Earned his Ph.D. in geology and geophysics at Yale University, his M.S. and M.Phil in geology and geophysics from Yale, as well as degrees in anthropology, a B.A., and geology, a B.S. from George Washington University. In the early 90s, Dr. Schoch, along with John Anthony West, recast the date of the Great Sphinx of Egypt from 2600 BC back to around 10,500 BC by demonstrating that the monument had been heavily eroded by water despite the fact that its location on the edge of the Sahara had endured hyper-arid climatic conditions for the past 5,000 years. Now, he revealed to the world that mankind's history is greater and older than previously believed. Tonight, We're going to discuss everything. We've got a lot of breaking news out of Egypt. We have the second Sphinx discovery. We've got the sarcophagus at Alexandria. We've got the recent EM measurements published. And that paper, we're going to get heavily into that with the Great Pyramid. And, of course, its new chamber above the Grand Gallery. And then we also have the new museum that's opening up at Giza. All that and much more tonight with our guest, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Robert, good evening, my friend. How are you?
Wonderful. Wonderful to be here.
Lots going on in Egypt, my friend. Lots going on. And you know what's interesting for me is most of it, is all within the last month and a half. We've been waiting for this kind of stuff for a very long time. And as I discussed with you earlier in the week, I don't think, not since what you and Jaws did back in 91, 92, I don't think we've had this kind of news come out of Giza since.
Yeah, I would agree with you. All of a sudden, I don't know, a lot of things have been happening and a lot of things have been released. And you have to wonder if part of it is just to drum up tourism and interest in Egypt, but I think it's more than that. There's genuinely things happening in Egypt.
You don't think they would have that kind? They wouldn't conspire for that, would you?
No, they would never conspire.
Never.
But you know, you can call it a conspiracy or not. It does make some sense for them to release things sort of in groups to catch people's attention. And you were just talking about that, I think. You know, how you have to get people's attention and several things at one time can do that.
Yeah, and just like today. Okay, all right. Before we get into Egypt, let me ask you this. And as a geologist, I don't know, and the world and science of geophysics, how much of this applies to you, but certainly as a youngster, you contemplated the Big Bang and the creation of everything. We've all done it.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
Okay. Is it possible? Okay, when you go back to the Big Bang and where it's energy, the energy over hundreds of thousands of years, collides with itself, and eventually particles and things combine, and then boom, we have us today. Okay, I understand the idea behind that, but the reversal of the universe to collapse back onto itself, how do you undo the creation of rocks? Right? How do you undo the creation?
How do you undo creation of rocks?
Right.
I don't know that you undo creation of rocks, but you can probably destroy them. And something that I think you have to take into account is that we do not know everything. That's a given. We do not perceive everything, and the universe that we live in is not composed of all the particles that we even know about in equal amounts. So I'm just throwing this out as something to think about, that you can have, for instance, a universe that is essentially, and this is a non-technical, non-physical term, or non-physicist term, you can have things like what they call mirror matter, which if mirror matter basically can overlap with our matter, but has all the same properties, but sort of in mirror reverse, so we're not even aware of it except for slight gravitational effects. You can have antimatter, that when antimatter comes into contact with matter as we know it, non-antimatter, it essentially, annihilates itself. So there are different ways, and I hate to say it this way, that you could get rid of our universe as I see it. Now, I'm not predicting any of those. I'm not saying any of that is going to happen, but it's different perhaps than undoing the universe, but it seems like there are certainly ways that you could have, for instance, another universe that annihilated our universe and itself in the process. I don't think that's totally inconceivable.
Okay. Now, see, that's why you're on the show. You just straightened my head out a little bit.
Did I really?
Well,
okay.
because how do you undo everything that was done? It's like the opposite of entropy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're going to disassemble everything, but as the universe would collapse on itself, well, then the antimatter that is existing would combine with the said matter and annihilate itself, and then that turns into energy, right?
Exactly, and we may have, and I think there's some evidence of this. We have pockets of antimatter in various places that we live in a subsection where that is not predominant. If it were, we wouldn't be talking here.
Right. At all, as a matter of fact, we wouldn't be talking at all. That's interesting. I'm now going to have to rethink. It's just I'm not so sure. This is my take. Okay, so going back. I just want your opinion on this. So we have, dark matter and gravity, which is forcing the universe to expand, right? All right, the resistance, and it's pushing the...
Well, yeah, but the whole business of dark matter is problematic also. And it's not clear that... dark matter and dark energy are explanations because we don't have an explanation.
Right.
And not to drive it back to Egyptology and archaeology, but dark matter and dark energy sort of remind me of the classic archaeologists when they find something and they don't know what it is. It's either a tomb or a temple. So they give a name to it, and somehow that explains it when it doesn't explain it.
Yeah, so they have...
That makes sense.
Right. And they have dark matter to explain everything.
Yeah, so I think there are real questions about dark energy and dark matter, and I'll also throw something else out here, which is, and I'm not, I don't want people to think I'm all of a sudden a big, quote, electric universe proponent, but if people know about the concept of the electric universe, it's sort of a different cosmological look at things, and really exploring some of these issues of the large-scale structure and development of the universe, something that people in that school, and when I say school, that line of thinking, and these are serious physicists and other researchers, have suggested that electrical forces at a large scale have been grossly underestimated. Most cosmologists have only been talking about gravity at the largest scales. They've downplayed electrical forces, which can both attract and repel, and that may well be a major mistake. And then I want to throw out something else, which is even further out there, but Max Planck, the great physicist who, of course, won the Nobel Prize for the development, the earliest development of quantum theory, he ultimately is quoted, and he came to the conclusion that not forget about matter, but matter is not primary. What's really primary is consciousness, and everything ultimately arises from consciousness. And I'm not saying that we all imagine it, but essentially consciousness as a field, if you would, to use a physicist term, or it's something beyond matter and energy that where everything may have originated, if I'm making any sense whatsoever.
No, that does, and I love that concept from Max about that, and staying on this, if the cyclical part of our universe expanding, contracting, back to the Big Bang, restarting again, and that's the cycle, right? We're going to expand and.
Yeah, that's a cycle some people have talked about.
I'm
but,
not into it.
Do we know if that's really the cycle?
Right.
Or is this somehow mitigated, or are there other universes that intercede? And ultimately, is there this thing behind it, consciousness at some, we'll call it universal level, that expresses itself, if I could put it that way, through matter and energy at some times, but other ways at other times, perhaps?
Yeah,
and time itself is a big issue here. What is time? Where does time originate, and how does that tie in with everything else?
Yeah, and well, that's a whole. We should do a whole show on time.
It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, time is that's one of the great unknowns, really, when it comes right down to it. And it's funny because we live in a society that is so dominated by time. I know that you're supposed to call me at a certain time, and I better be here, and I'm counting on you calling me then, etc. But we don't really know what time is.
No, we don't. And if it originates right now, we base everything on the start of the universe, right? That was the start of time.
Exactly.
But a half a second before the Big Bang, time existed, right? I mean,
or did it exist? And what does it mean, half a second before the Big Bang? More or less half a second before our universe, as we try to trace it back in time.
Yeah, so we have BC, but if we had before the Big Bang, that would be BBC, and we already have that in London. But nonetheless, and that was a good joke, by the way. That was pretty funny. If we look at the expansion of the universe, wouldn't it at some point get to a balancing point where it can no longer support the forces pushing out, and then it would contract? You know what I mean? It would just find its balance of size versus matter versus
antimatter. That's the concept of a steady state universe.
Yes.
Or at least it would approach some kind of steady state. But again, I was suggesting, and I'm not saying I'm right about this, but what if it impinges upon some other universe or some other pocket of something which is antithetical to it, whether you want to call that antimatter or mirror matter or something else, and it starts annihilating or being annihilated at that boundary, at that edge.
Now, staying in this concept with, our universe, say you and I are outside of our universe looking in, right? And we're just looking at this ball. Next to it, now we have a multiverse concept, which I fully believe that is the case. So you have got all these multiverses out there. Is it possible that one universe could then drift into another?
I think so. I think there's no doubt. In fact, there are suggestions that has happened and that we have evidence of that. So there's something known as the cosmic background microwave radiation that is generally attributed to the beginning of the universe as we know it. This is evidence supposedly for the Big Bang, and tracing it back, it's the leftover radiation from the Big Bang.
The heat.
The heat, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. But as I understand it, and just looking at the Day of Some, I'm a geophysicist, not a theoretical cosmologist, but bubbles in that, in homogeneities in that, etc., have been interpreted as indicating that maybe places where our universe impinges or impacts on other universes, or has in the past. So we may have, or we have evidence that can be interpreted, I would say, as evidence of other universes impacting us or overlapping with us, that type of thing. The second thing I want to suggest is think of our universe. Our universe is in so many dimensions. We'll think in 3 or 4 dimensions if you consider time a dimension, but there could be a lot more dimensions. So you could have other universes in other dimensions that we don't perceive. I'll try to paint a picture here. If you think of a thin piece of wire and you put that as a circle, and then you have another universe as another thin piece of wire, you could put one inside the other without them ever actually overlapping. And then at one point you maybe disturb them and they run into each other and interact. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, that vibration would be the
overlap. You might think of them as vibrating.
Yes.
Actually, that's a good way to think of it. A vibrating piece of circular wire, and they're vibrating, and as long as they don't get in each other's way, they're fine, but then they might start vibrating, and they vibrate so much that they hit each other, or maybe they set up a resonance between themselves. Again, we're using analogies that we can try to wrap our heads around, but I think they can be extrapolated up to that level.
It'd be like when you tangle up your slinky when you were a kid.
Yeah. Or you tangle up your slinky with someone else's slinky.
That's right. You remember that?
Exactly. And then both are damaged irretrievably because you can never get those slinkies back just the way they used to be.
See, that's why I think sometimes I could be a physicist, because I can introduce the slinky theory.
There you go.
I'm
the
good.
universe is just a slinky, and we get tangled up with other slinkies, and then both slinkies are bent up and a mess, and you can't get them. Remember how once they got bent up, you couldn't get them back into proper shape?
Nope. You could sit there all you did was make it worse.
Exactly.
It never got better. I never had an untangled slinky. I can go on the record and say that I've never untangled a slinky. Yeah, remember how it would flip over on itself too, as well, right?
Yeah.
So you had that crazy twist in it, and when you tried to get that kink out, that twist, it would just move up the slinky. Right?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think we are here on the radio developing a whole new cosmology.
You know what? Let's get DeGrasse Tyson involved in this. He would argue the anti-slinky. He would poo-poo it.
Anti-slinkies versus the slinkies.
So now, actually, this is a brilliant segue.
But this is all really serious stuff
It
in
is.
a sense, looking at the big picture. And I wasn't, what I was saying, we got off on slinkies, but actually I think these are some good analogies, and I think this is serious stuff to think about.
It is. And what I find amazing these days, and I know you must get a lot of satisfaction out of this, is that we have our community of thinkers that thinks outside of the box, our community and our audience, and we're all here and supporting each other. But we were always fighting against the man and science and schools and universities, right? This push and pull, and you could feel it. But today, Robert, science and our community are starting to overlap. Things are happening, like this study of the Great Pyramid with electromagnetic waves,
right?
And how
exactly.
This has been put out there by our community for a few decades now, going back to the 70s, and laying it out there. Everybody, tinfoil hat, craziness. You guys are nuts. It's just a tomb. That's all it is. It's a pile of rocks. And here today, science is, this report was a game changer. What went through your mind as the news broke?
Actually, I'll tell you what went through my mind. And I want to say what we're talking about. It was a report in the Journal of Applied Physics. And it's by actually a group, and I hate to say it this way, but they're a Russian group. They're from out of St. Petersburg, which I have found that a lot of my European colleagues are much more, should we say, open to certain things and looking at certain things.
Right.
So I wasn't surprised where it was coming from. But what they did is they did theoretical modeling of the Great Pyramid in terms of how could it interact with electromagnetic frequencies, electromagnetic properties, energies, that type of thing. And lo and behold, they found that it can, in fact, I'll call it funnel and channel, if you would, electromagnetic energy, concentrated in the chambers that you have in the pyramid. This is very, very theoretical in the sense that they were taking a model of it. When I say a model, not even a physical model, but conceptual model of it, but applying very sophisticated cutting-edge physics to it to see what would come out theoretically. And what came out theoretically, in my opinion, matches very much what, as you said, people have been talking about. And I would say not going back to the 1970s, but even going back to the 19th century, where people were talking about these types of phenomena in different types of terms. Some people would talk about pyramid power and all of that.
Right.
But there were examples of people going up to the top of the Great Pyramid in the 19th century, taking Leyden jars, if you know what that is. It can actually collect basically a charge from static electricity that would build up on the pyramid. Very crude way to do it. But they were doing this and finding that they could collect electromagnetic energy that was being concentrated by the Great Pyramid. And basically stored in this capacitor type primitive Leyden jar, and then release a huge spark from it, that type of thing. So demonstrating this conceptually. So now that we have in the 21st century really outstanding studies by top-notch physicists showing that yes, the same thing is theoretically possible. Now, they do say in the study that this needs more work, but that's standard science. That's the way science goes. One thing that I found very interesting was they talked about concentrating in the Great Pyramid and then being funneled down through it into the subterranean chamber, in particular, through the King's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and into the subterranean chamber, which is deep underground. And something that a lot of people have talked about with the Great Pyramid, and a lot of my academic colleagues dismiss completely, is that there may be, how should we say it, psychic changes. People talk about going to different states of consciousness, altered states of consciousness, having psychical experiences in the Great Pyramid. And they don't say it in this study, but I could not help but think as I read it that this also supports and corroborates those types of testimonies.
Because
we are very much affected by electromagnetic frequencies and electromagnetic energy and electromagnetic, geomagnetic changes. And something that I hate to say it this way, but people who allow themselves to be sensitive to such things, I would contend, and I'll say from personal testimony, you can feel it in the Great Pyramid.
That's right.
And it's not just nonsense, but a lot of my academic colleagues, of course, dismiss all of this. Now, here we have a real paper by serious physicists, and it's funny, we were talking about physics before with the universe and the origin, end of the universe or whatever, but the same here. And you can show theoretically that this is exactly what should be the case. And other studies have shown without a doubt that we as humans and all biological organisms are quite sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies, especially in the low frequency, long wavelength ranges.
And which they document here as well.
Exactly.
Let's take a break right here. It's a perfect spot to do it. Our guest tonight is Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Now, we all know Napoleon went into the Great Pyramid, came out a different man, and so did Robert Schoch. But he won't tell me about it. Maybe he will after this break. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out! That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. Dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Church on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly ancient life oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Gobekli Tepe. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Promo code F2B blend. Just go to the banners right there at jimmychurchradio.com. Now, Dr. Schoch, you and I have talked about this over the years, but for me, and I don't have all those letters that follow my name that make me some academic, but the idea and the concept of force and the rocks at the Great Pyramid being stacked up on top of each other, and then you combine granite, and which is 5 levels above the King's Chamber, surrounded the walls surrounding the King's Chamber. The forces of granite on top of each other has to, conceptually in my mind, create energy. This EM study certainly suggests that, and I think that is great. But when you're inside of the King's Chamber, the sheer weight and the energy that is created from those forces above you has to create something. It just does, and it has to affect or have an effect. You spent the night. You spent the night in the King's Chamber. You slept in the sarcophagus. We've talked about that. You won't reveal it. Maybe you will tonight on the show, but that's fine. But you
dream on.
But as you're reading this report, you have your own experiences there, and it had to resonate with you. This report, where you know that there's something going on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is a nice confirmation, I think, of what I and many people have realized from being there. And you mentioned, I think, just as we were going into the break about Napoleon, I am in good company. Napoleon never spoke about it. I tend to be a more private person in some cases, so no, I'm not going to talk about this. But can I put a plug in?
Sure.
People should come with me to Egypt in June 2019, and they can at least they're not going to spend the night in the Great Pyramid. I can't, we're not going to do that, but we will be in the Great Pyramid. We will go to the King's Chamber. We will explore it. We will get, everyone will get the opportunity to get a sense and feel for it themselves. So that's really the best way to do it if people have the means and the desire, come join me in June 2019. I'm doing a public trip. I do public trips, as you know, sometimes there. I also, of course, go there for my own research.
Now, all the information is at robertschoch.com.
Correct. Go to robertschoch.com and then click on the Egypt trip banner. And this Egypt trip, I want to be very clear because I'm very excited about this. This is not me personally doing it. Yes, I'm leading it or co-leading it with another colleague of mine. It is for Oracle, Organization for the Research of Ancient Cultures, which is a nonprofit organization that I helped co-found with other colleagues, and we are devoted to education and research into these ancient, I'll use the term, ancient mysteries in a genuine, serious, evidence-based, scientific way, but also in an open box way, if you would, not the conventional status quo academic way in the bad sense, but in the good sense of following the evidence wherever it goes. And that evidence includes what consistently people talk about and feel. That is evidence. It may not be what some academics want, but that is genuine evidence as far as I'm concerned when you have a consistent reaction of people, for instance, to the King's Chamber or to the subterranean chamber, and then getting back to what we were talking about now, physical analysis and physicists analyzing the structure of the Great Pyramid, saying, yes, there is something to it in terms of the electromagnetics and other studies that say, yes, we are affected by such electromagnetic phenomena, and that does affect our consciousness, that does affect our states of being, our I hate to use the term because it's overused, but altered states of being.
That's right. And when we combine this, I mean, there's such a huge pile of unanswered questions when it comes to Giza. The construction, getting all of the red granite transported 500 miles,
how from Aswan.
Yeah, from Aswan. How they possibly quarried it before the invention of steel. How it got built, how it got done in 20 years. All of there's that part of it which seems nearly impossible. But then when you throw in, if you are my tour guide and I'm out there with you, and I'm looking at this.
You come with me and I will be your tour guide.
That's right.
Come in June 2019. Whoever wants to come, I'm their tour guide.
Just to let you know, Rita and I are talking about it. But anyway, okay, but I would have to throw this now on top of the pile of unanswered questions, which is, how is it possible that Stone Age man, if this was done at 3000 BC, how is it possible that Stone Age man could understand the concepts of electromagnetic concentration into certain chambers and points inside of the pyramid, aside from everything else that we're dealing with the construction of stuff on Giza? How is it possible that they could have this kind of knowledge that we are today trying to understand, but yet 5,000 years ago, an ancient culture like this had a full grip on this type of physics? I don't get it.
You're making a couple of assumptions, right? And one of the assumptions is that they were doing this 5,000 years ago versus maybe it goes back to a much earlier period.
That's
because
right.
Something you and I have certainly talked about before is, and I didn't start out this way, but I'm absolutely now fully convinced that there was an earlier, I call it cycle of civilization, that the Sphinx is a remnant of, that goes back to the before the end of the last ice age, and I think incredible sophistication. And when we're talking about the dynastic Egyptians, and this is something I will show evidence of on site as we go through Egypt, that very much dynastic Egypt of 4,000 to 5,000 years ago was a legacy of a much earlier civilization and remembrance, if you would, of some things they knew. So I think we have to push some of this knowledge back much further, including, I'm convinced that at least portions of the Great Pyramid go back to that much earlier period. And there's lots of evidence for that on the ground. There's lots of evidence for that in the ancient texts that the ancient Egyptians talked about themselves. They talked about much earlier history. The classical Egyptologists of the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries, of course, dismiss that and say the ancient Egyptians didn't know as much about their early history as the Egyptologists do today, but they talked about having this long period before 3000, approximately 3000 BC, long before dynastic times. This ties in with my work on the Great Sphinx, as we have discussed numerous times. It ties in with Robert Bauval, my colleague, Robert Bauval, and his Orion correlation of the Great Pyramid, the Second Pyramid, and the Third Pyramid with the Belt of Orion, but not in 25 or 2600 BC, but about 10 to 11,000 BC. So there's a lot of evidence that there's a lot of different things going on, different than what conventional Egyptologists say on the Giza Plateau.
Is it possible that that Boston University will allow you to teach these concepts and actually have a course?
We are getting there. It's very funny you asked that. I just, funny in the sense of coincidental.
Sure.
For the first time, I taught a course over the summer, and the title of it was, and I was asked to teach this. I didn't solicit, can I teach this? I was asked by one of the administrators that I've known for a long time at Boston University and faculty member administrator to teach a course called Mysteries of Archaeology.
Oh.
Lo and behold, of course, what do you think I included? I included a lot of the types of things we're talking about, and I included, genuine discussion of the evidence and where the conventional views come up short and what we don't know and what the possibilities might be.
How to go over?
Very, very well. Very well. Students, I think people are really looking for this information. And I try to encourage the students to be open-minded, to look at the genuine evidence. I'm not trying to, substitute one dogma with another dogma or doctrine. I'm saying look at the real evidence. Let's put it into context and see where it goes. And when you do that, yes, dynastic Egypt is dynastic Egypt, and I don't deny dynastic Egypt, but there's a lot more to it than just the conventional view. Again, sometimes people misinterpret me, and I'm not denying that there was Tutmosis IV or, the different Ramesses or the Pharaoh Khufu. But what I'm saying is that in some cases, they were adopting and reusing and refurbishing and rebuilding, and the civilization as a whole was building on an earlier legacy. And we have the same thing in Europe. Modern Europe in the last 500 years didn't pop out of nowhere.
You must have been in the zone. That must have been the funnest course for you to finally...
Oh, yeah, it was fun. It was interesting. It was fun.
Well, now, what about...
So we're making little inroads, even within academia.
So that was a summer course. Do you see the possibility of this expanding?
That's what I want to do. I would like to expand it. I would like to develop this further. Something else which is in its very incipient stages, but again, I want to build it up as I was allowed. And it's really very small now. It's essentially me, and all these things cost money, et cetera, and I don't want to sound the wrong way. But I have now been allowed to organize and put together what is called, let me just say the name, the Institute for the Study of the Origins of Civilization, the ISOC, Institute for the Study of the Origins of Civilization at Boston University within my college, the College of General Studies. and it's very small. I'm the director of it, but essentially I'm directing myself, if you would.
This is great news, man.
Yeah, so I'm starting to make inroads. So between that, and I already mentioned Oracle, which is a independent nonprofit organization, so that money can be, how should I say? What's the word I want? Donations can be made, money can be raised. As I said, we're doing this trip in June 2019, which gives people opportunity to go to Egypt with me. It also helps Oracle, not in terms of fundraising so much, but just to get it off the ground and get it out there in status, that type of thing.
Well, it reminds me,
So I feel like we're trying to make real inroads in a serious sense, not, because I'm an academic. I teach at a university, Boston University, and so I can criticize my fellow academics, but I also want to work with them, and I want this to become both part of the mainstream, but not be sucked into the mainstream, and all of a sudden, I go the other way. We need to keep to the evidence and keep to what we're doing, but make that more accessible.
Well, but you have to prepare. Let's say the course starts. Now you can get a degree in Egyptology Part 2, right? Okay, or whatever it is. But
yeah, I don't know if we call it Egyptology, but something. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So
we have to think of a good title for it.
But there is the one question that you're going to have to prepare for. First day, some student is going to raise their hand and go, "Okay, professor, all good. But who really built the pyramids?" And so I'm that student. I raise my hand and I ask the question.
So you know why I say that's your research project for the semester.
That's your answer. Okay.
No, but I think what we have to do, and I think this is a very important point. You asked me who really built the Great Pyramid. I would say, okay, just to put in context, I believe, based on the evidence, and whenever I say I believe, I'm not channeling it or anything like that. I'm not putting channelers down, but that's not me.
Right.
I think there's evidence for Khufu being involved with the Great Pyramid. Khufu, or known also as Cheops, the famous 4th dynasty pharaoh, but that doesn't mean he built it from scratch. That doesn't mean he built it de novo. I think he was involved with it, used it at some point.
You know what I think he did?
That doesn't mean he's totally responsible for it. I think there are earlier stages to it that go back to a much earlier period. I think, many of these things were being reused and reappropriated, and they go back to this much earlier period. Now, who are those people? I don't know precisely at this point, and I think that's something we have to be able to do, is be honest in some cases that we don't know the answers to certain research and discovery.
What, you know what I think Khufu had to do with the Great Pyramid? You can write this down, too. You can add this to the curriculum. He owned the janitorial company.
There you go.
He was the grounds crew. He was the grounds crew. He
was the grounds crew.
He kept it clean.
But he might actually agree with you. And let me put it this way. The inventory stela, there's something known as the inventory stela. I'm not making this up. And I can show, if it's still on display, I'll show it to everyone when we go to the Egyptian museums. I'm not sure which museum it's in at the moment, because they're moving things from the old museum to the Grand Egyptian Museum, and so some things may not be on display anymore. If not, I'll show pictures of it. But it's a little stela. It's from the late period, but it purports, and I think it purports correctly, to be a copy of a much, much earlier inscriptions and texts that go back to the Old Kingdom, and there Khufu is recorded basically as having taken care of these older structures. I'm sort of bastardizing at the moment. I'm simplifying it, but basically he was taking care of and restoring older structures like the Sphinx, like the pyramids or the Great Pyramid. So in that sense, maybe you wouldn't want to call him the janitor, but I think many of them may have been proud to be the caretakers of sort of ancient sacred sites.
Yeah, maintenance crew.
Maintenance crew, exactly.
Out there with a weed eater, you know.
yeah. What do they call the those things that spin around quickly and kill the
weed eater. And so
is that what it is? A weed eater? Okay.
Somebody,
weed eater. Yeah.
You know, they had to clear out. The
right in the
causeway.
desert. In the desert, because they get so many weeds in the desert.
They do. The causeway was inundated with weeds. So you got to keep that pathway clean. So
that's right.
And I say that in jest, but not really.
Well, no, not really, because when you look at the great, any of those, the Sphinx in particular, but the Great Pyramid, etc., if you don't brush away the sand and whatnot, you're on the edge of the Sahara Desert. The sand piles up. So, in fact, they do need constant maintenance, and that goes back to ancient times. I say ancient times, that goes back to dynastic times. So the dynastic Egyptians record how they were digging the Sphinx out of the sand. They record how they had to, basically do cleaning on the Giza Plateau to keep everything free of sand.
Now let's stay on the science side of this. We've got so much that we want to discuss tonight.
I don't think we ever left the science side, did we?
No. I could though. So let's stay on the science. Let's discuss this the Muon project and we can continue after the break. But one of the things about this that left a great taste in my mouth was how Zahi Hawass has said over and over again, there's nothing to see here. And here this project clearly has found a new chamber above the Grand Gallery where there was supposed to be nothing. Again, the science is overlapping our community, isn't it, Robert?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what we're talking about, just so everyone knows, is the muography or the Muon project. It's also known as scan pyramids, and this is a bunch of top-notch physicists again. So it's interesting how a lot of physics and geophysics is being used on the plateau now. This is something I hate to say it this way, but I feel like I helped pioneer this back in the 1990s when, with Thomas DeBecke, a geophysicist, we found a chamber under the paw of the Sphinx. And I want to come back to that because I see a big analogy here.
Yes.
They're using muons, muography. This is a scan pyramids project, a consortium of French, Japanese, a big Japanese contingent, I think French, Canadians, etc., but really top-notch physicists bringing in incredible equipment, and what they're doing is setting up detectors in and around the Great Pyramid. They've set up detectors to capture muons. So it's very similar to what people know as X-rays. Muons are essentially like electrons, but much heavier and much shorter half-life of millions of a second. The muons are produced in the atmosphere from cosmic rays hitting different types of atoms. They basically break up the atoms or hit the atoms. They release muons in some cases that stream down, and we have muons going through us all the time. You and I and everyone that's listening has muons flowing through their body. They don't interact with matter as we know it, matter that we're used to. They have very, very, very low interactions with that. But when you have something like the Great Pyramid with all this stone work, a few of the muons do interact with the stone. So the muons slow down or they are attenuated. There's not as many muons coming through where you have huge masses of stone. So if you put in detectors in and around the Great Pyramid, you can detect if there's some places where more muons are flowing through, that would show cavities, that would show empty chambers. So that's exactly what they're doing, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So it's like an X-ray. And what they have found, and I have looked at all the original data and read their original papers and whatnot, and I'm convinced it's really good data and a very convincing case. They have found a huge chamber probably parallel or subparallel to the Grand Gallery, above the Grand Gallery. So to put it in perspective, this is probably about 30 feet tall, maybe 7 feet wide, maybe 150 feet long. So you're talking a major chamber paralleling the Grand Gallery. That's not supposed to be there, according to Egyptologists, because there's more muons coming through, and you can detect it that way. And they've done it from several different angles using several different types of muon detectors, etc. They're all saying the same thing. So to me, it's really good data and really exciting.
And then it was a second chamber that they found, a smaller one on the north face.
Yeah, on the face, near the entrance, near the known entrance, sort of above it. I wasn't surprised by that one at all, because architecturally it always looked to me like there was probably something up there in that space, and they seem to have detected that also with the same technique. Also, they've done some thermal imaging, which seems to detect the same chamber. That there's something going on there. So one thing I would stress is you've got multiple lines of evidence all detecting these in the same spaces. I also wanted to mention, I don't want to sound the wrong way, but you have a bunch of Egyptologists like Zai Hawass and Mark Lehner who are dismissing this completely and saying that there's nothing there, or if there is anything there, it's just a few little cavities between the rocks. I mean, they're just going crazy trying to dismiss it. And when I read their rebuttals in some cases, which are just made to the press, it's fairly evident to me they have not looked at the raw data, or if they have, they haven't understood it, because some of the comments they make seem to indicate an ignorance of the subject matter, should we say.
Do you and Mark talk?
No. No, not in a nasty sense. I just haven't run across him or seen him in years.
Right, so you guys don't correspond.
Probably decades now.
Right, not going back to the...
No, but it's not that, it's not like we've run into each other and refused to talk. I literally just haven't had any contact with him. But I haven't sought it out either.
Well, I can understand.
I've seen Zai Hawass a number of times over the last couple of decades. I'm not real recently, but I was always on much better terms with him.
Well, I only bring it up because I've only got about a minute before the break. That for Mark and for Zahi, for them to have stood their ground so firmly on what the Great Pyramid could be, they've closed those doors. If this, they're going to have to backpedal, and that's the thing.
Yeah, it becomes hard when you sort of put so much emphasis on one view, when you've written so many books and articles promoting that one view, and then you have data that comes out that contradicts it. I mean, I understand where they're coming from, and I feel... I don't know. I was going to say I feel bad for them. I don't feel bad for them, but, they have a lot of vested interest in the way they see things, and they don't want to change.
Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Yeah, I've always wondered, by the way, when I've looked at that entrance on the north face, that there is so much more underneath that first layer of construction. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Dr. Schoch after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, Gobekli Tepe.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Hi folks, what can I say without making claims? CBD is truly the buzzword for health. What does it do? Government institutions will not allow me to say what this wonderful oil does for us. But I can say it's non-GMO and organic. I can say it's 0.003 THC, which in plain English means you won't get high. There are those that want to squash your freedom to buy natural products. Fight back with your purchase power. In the end, it is you that takes care of your health. Go to ancientlifeoil.com. One more time, ancientlifeoil.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. We're doing all things Egypt tonight. Lots and lots of breaking news out of Egypt. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by Numana, emergency food storage for you and your family. Click on the Numana banners over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Use the promo code Jimmy10. Jimmy10 will get you 10% off. It'll get you free shipping. And it will also get you every order over $100 an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Dr. Schoch, do you have a Fade to Black t-shirt?
No, I don't.
Katie. Katie has yours.
Oh, she has mine.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you need to
Katie,
check.
my wife.
You need to
For
check.
those that don't know who Katie is.
You need to go talk to Katie. I can just see you on the next Egypt tour wearing a Fade to Black t-shirt because you're a rock and roller. And we got to get that fixed. The second Sphinx. Now, you and I...
Wait. Before we get to the second Sphinx, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Because we were just talking about the muography and that type of thing. So I found it very funny. The physicists described this chamber, the chamber they found above the Grand Gallery, and they described it very matter-of-factly as a void, a big void. When something's 150 feet long, etc., it is a big void. I think that's very descriptive. Then the Ministry of Antiquities and the Egyptologists were all up in arms, and they said, oh, that's propaganda.
What do you think it could be? What I mean by that is this: could it be like an escape route for those that built the original?
No, I don't think you're talking escape route, because not when you're talking something that big. I think it might be holding something. It might be holding records or something like that, not unlike the chamber under the paw of the Sphinx that we found. And what I wanted to say before the break, as I said, I wanted to come back to this for just a second. I have incredible sympathy for what they're going through now with the Egyptologists denying the physics that found this chamber. And of course, it still has to be explored, and it would be nice to drill into it and see what's physically there, etc. Do I expect that to happen anytime soon? Not necessarily, knowing how things go in Egypt. But it's being totally dismissed, even though it's based on even though it's based on sound physics. And I experienced the same thing when we found the chamber under the paw of the Sphinx. They dismissed that too and basically put a squelch on the research and said this was propaganda. It's stealing Egypt from the Egyptians. They're doing the same thing with this. So there's this weird resistance to developing new theories, new evidence.
Well, they're talking about doing the Gatenbrink model. You know, they're talking about now putting
putting
Muon
something
robots.
like that.
Yeah.
For this, though, there's no passages that go up to it that anyone knows at this point.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. At the top of the Grand Gallery, where have you looked up? Do you think there's...
Yes, I know what you're talking about, but there's no evidence that this goes into that, what was just found. But you don't know.
You don't. And
you don't know.
I need your academic eyeballs, up there at the top of the stairs, the entrance into the King's Chamber, and kind of the possibility of something blocking a tunnel going into...
because, when you go into the King's Chamber, there are some blocks that look fairly loose, that type of thing.
Well, you tell me. I mean, you've been there. Do you think that there is a possibility of getting into this newly discovered chamber?
Probably not from there because of the positioning of it, that type of thing. And I've been up into the so-called relieving chambers or relief chambers or chambers of construction above the King's Chamber. I don't know of many people that have been up there, but I'm one of them. And I saw no way to go from that into this new big void, as they call it. So it may be totally sealed off, but we just don't know for certain. It really is going to take more study. And there's the problem. Will the Egyptian authorities allow that study to continue? I don't know.
Now, I heard a rumor, I want to run this past you, that there was a period of a couple of months where they had some tents set up and some trucks outside of the entrance of the Great Pyramid, and that they gained access to the chamber, removed the stuff that they found, and it will be part of the new Grand Museum's opening.
Well, which chamber are you talking about?
The new chamber above the Grand Gallery that they actually got access.
No, they didn't get into that. What those, to the best of my knowledge, those tents and trucks and whatnot,
right.
that was some thermal imaging instruments that the physicists we were talking about, the Scan Pyramids physicists, were using to do thermal imaging of the Great Pyramid. Because what you have is that the Great Pyramid heats up and it cools down between, the daylight hours and the nighttime hours, etc. But different rocks absorb and emit heat in different amounts, and also they cool down in different ways, and they will cool down quicker or slower depending not just on the rock type, but if there's cavities behind them. And in fact, they found what may be some cavities that way, or chambers, whatever you want to call it, using that type of thermal imaging. I mean, I saw that. That's what they were doing there.
So you don't think there is a possibility that for the grand opening they just do this huge reveal? Oh, by the way.
No, I actually don't. I mean, is it remotely possible? 0.0001% probability. But no, I don't think so. Partly, I don't think to try to move anything around in Egypt, to try to go into something like that without anyone detecting it, without anyone leaking, that type of thing, between security, between the practical aspects of it, the keeping everyone quiet, it's not realistic, I don't think, that they've been able to do that.
Now, and staying on this, we have the new museum, which is going to open up in November.
Yep.
And this is
the Grand Egyptian Museum.
And this is on site at Giza. Great for tourism.
Yeah, it's a couple of kilometers, basically north of the pyramids. You and I were talking over the phone privately, and I'll describe it now. They, among other things, are going to have a big picture window view of the pyramids from the Grand Egyptian Museum. Katie and I had the opportunity to visit it while it's still under construction, and we saw parts of it, not so much the exhibit areas, but the first thing they completed were the conservation areas, because they're bringing statues and artifacts and that type of thing into the museum. So the first thing they have to do is take care of them, preserve them, conserve them before they actually put them on display. But they are, I want to say the whole museum's costing hundreds of millions, maybe $500 million. I mean, this is a major project.
What are they going to do with the old museum?
I don't know. I hope that they preserve it, because it's a beautiful architectural building, so it's a masterpiece in its own right. It's not what people expect of a museum nowadays. I personally hope that they keep it open with just a few pieces on display in the classic traditional setting, and if they don't, I'll miss it. To me, that's the Cairo Museum, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. But the Grand Egyptian Museum, I think the new one, is going to be magnificent.
Now, this second Sphinx, you and I have done a couple of shows about this in the past, and the fourth pyramid. We've discussed this a lot. This news broke last week and the week before that a second Sphinx was discovered. I need you to help me clarify what's going on. This is now Luxor they're talking about, and not a second Sphinx on Giza, which is something that's been talked about a lot too.
There's so much talk about second sphinxes, and I have lived through decades of second sphinxes. As I was reflecting on this, since you and I talked privately on the phone a couple of days ago before this radio show, I remember people coming out with the second sphinx on the Giza Plateau several different times. I've been shown by, I don't even want to name the name, but Egyptian Egyptologist he showed me one area on the plateau. I'll get to Luxor in a minute. He showed me one area on the plateau, and he said, this is the second Sphinx, and I'm not convinced of it at all. He said, you can't really see it anymore because it's been carved and modified and turned into tombs. That's sort of west and south of the Sphinx. Then there's another place where someone else claims there's a Sphinx sort of north and west of the Sphinx on the plateau. I'm not convinced of that. A lot of the discussion of the second Sphinx is because the stela between the paws of the Sphinx, and I will show this to everyone who goes to Egypt with me, will see it on site. There's this big granite stela between the paws of the Sphinx that was erected by Thutmose IV about 1400 BC when he dug out what he considered a very ancient Sphinx. He dug it out of the sand. At that time, as he records, the Sphinx was buried in sand up to its neck. He dug it out. He put the stela, this big granite carving, with hieroglyphic inscriptions all over it between the paws of the Sphinx, and on it he shows not one Sphinx but two Sphinxes. So ever since then, everyone's looking for the second Sphinx, because if there's two Sphinxes on the stela between the paws of the Sphinx, people figure, well, there must be the Great Sphinx and another Sphinx. So what came out recently in the news was the, quote, second Sphinx in Luxor, which is, way down south, up the Nile, because the Nile flows from south to north. So way down south in Luxor. The problem is that this, quote, second Sphinx is about maybe not the second Sphinx, not the third Sphinx, not the fourth Sphinx from my perspective, but maybe Sphinx number 375 or who knows what, because there are Sphinxes all over Luxor. And I actually looked it up, and I looked at the links that you and I discussed. I looked up some other research on it, and it's exactly where I would expect another Sphinx to be found. It's just a big monolithic statue of a Sphinx, maybe 26 feet long, I think in this case, the one they're talking about. But 26 feet is nothing compared to, 240 feet or whatever for the Great Sphinx. And in Luxor, they were carving Sphinxes all over the place because they had an avenue from what's now known as Luxor Temple to Karnak Temple, several kilometers, and that avenue was lined with Sphinxes on either side. So they find Sphinxes all the time whenever they, build roads in that area.
Why take it to this level, second Sphinx? Because second Sphinx only means one thing to you and I and the rest of the community.
That's exactly it. So here's my theory, and it's not I don't mean to be nasty, but when people say second Sphinx, if they release a news article or announcement about a second Sphinx, they know that we're going to talk about on the radio. Because second Sphinx to us means a complement to the Great Sphinx. Another Sphinx the size of the Great Sphinx, basically a companion to the Great Sphinx. We're not thinking about something that's maybe 20 or 30 feet long. We're thinking of something that's hundreds of feet long. So it's sort of, what did they say?
Well, to be
in
clear,
advertising, you switch and bait and switch, or something like that.
bait and switch, because
yeah. So they say second Sphinx. Well, it's not the second Sphinx. It's Sphinx number 375, as I was saying. I'm just making up that number, but they got your attention, and they want your attention. And then I was reading one article, and it even said, well, the authorities haven't released a photograph of it, but they encourage tourists to come and visit Luxor and see it for themselves. Well, what is this saying? They want tourism. They want you to help the Egyptian economy.
To be clear, the Great Sphinx was carved of the earth.
That's right, bedrock, living rock.
Big difference.
It is still attached.
Still attached. And so this second Sphinx that is in the news right now is portable.
It's a portable statue. Oh,
right.
yeah. I mean, it weighs, tens of tons. I don't know how much it weighs.
But it's movable.
But it's portable. It's a portable Sphinx. It's a pocket Sphinx compared to the Great Sphinx.
And why? Okay, so it's not. Let's be very clear. It's kind of like talking about the Bosnian pyramids. I need you to be very clear here, Robert.
No. It's not like the Bosnian pyramids. The Bosnian pyramids. I'll be blunt. You like me to be honest.
That's what I'm saying. Let's be blunt.
It doesn't matter.
I'm
not going to be dishonest anyway, whether you like it or not. Bosnian pyramids are nonsense. They're a modern fake. This is not a modern fake, but it's not the Great Sphinx. It's just another ancient Sphinx from about 3,000 plus years ago. It's not even as old as the Great Sphinx. It's much smaller. And it's nice. I mean, I'd love to have a mansion and have it in my garden, but it's not the Great Sphinx.
So let's eliminate the second Sphinx being discovered in Luxor theory. or suggestion. Okay, but let's move
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Let's
So it's a Sphinx that was discovered in Luxor. You find a lot of Sphinxes in Luxor, and Luxor is beautiful. If people, I don't want to sound the wrong way, but on the trips I take people on, we go and we visit Luxor. We see Luxor Temple, we see Karnak Temple, we see the Avenue Sphinxes, and they'll know exactly what we're talking about. But it's not the Great Sphinx.
Is there, going back to Giza, is there a possibility, because it is there on the Sphinx Stela, there's no doubt about it, Tutmosis IV clearly stated he had a dream, he fell asleep, you would be the next pharaoh if you unbury me, exactly that story. And he said on the Stela that there was a second Sphinx. Now, if we look at the Giza Plateau, where could it be? I've always thought northwest corner up near the bird cave, right? The bird. Yeah,
I mean, I think that would be a possibility. Something that Sir Flinders Petrie, who was one of the great Egyptologists, it's very funny. Not funny, but interesting that some of the great Egyptologists of the late 19th, early 20th century, I mean, if they were alive today, I think they'd be very disappointed with some of the modern Egyptologists and how close-minded they are.
Right.
But that's another comment. He thought that maybe it was across the Nile in Heliopolis. But no one's ever found it. And, what happened is a lot of these areas are so built up now, and they've, people are living there. So whether you're talking across the Nile or you're talking up in the northwest corner, I was looking at Google Map, actually with this in mind, and if you start looking at Giza, I mean, I've seen this in my own research, in my own time, going back and forth to Egypt. What used to be desert to the west and north of Giza is now all being built up. So I'm afraid that maybe the second Sphinx, which I think there's a very good possibility there really was a second Sphinx or is a second Sphinx. It may be buried in sand, and it may even be built over at this point.
What about, now we talk about Giza a lot, but what about maybe in Saqqara?
I'm thinking about it. That's why I'm hesitating. I don't see evidence of second Sphinx in Saqqara. What I mean by that is, no, if I saw a second Sphinx there, I'd tell you right away. But Saqqara is a very different outline, a very different plan. It has a very different, should we say, feel to it, what was being built there, what was being developed there, and it doesn't intuitively strike me as a place where you find a second Sphinx, just because I don't know that a second Sphinx would fit in there. What you do have at Saqqara, which you and I have talked about before, is the Serapeum, besides the step pyramid. But the Serapeum, where you have these huge granite, they call them sarcophagi. I prefer the term coffer, but these huge granite boxes, which are quite inexplicable as to how they got there. They're underground in this complex sort of tunnel system, and they were used traditionally. The traditional concept, although this has never been absolutely demonstrated, is they were used for sacred bulls, mummified sacred bulls, but they actually didn't find any in them, and they're quite inexplicable. You have that there, and the other major thing that people think of Saqqara for is the step pyramid, which is a magnificent structure in its own right, but very different than the Giza pyramids.
Yeah, the only sarcophagus, the big ones that I've seen, are at the Met in New York, right?
And they're small compared to what you see in the Serapeum.
Exactly,
they're miniature compared to the Serapeum.
And it blows my mind because when you go into, they have one massive one in the Dendera glass room right in the back. And that thing is probably 6 to 8 feet wide, 6 to 8 feet tall, and it's got to be 12 to 14 feet long. Massive black granite, and they've got the lid there. And you stand there and you look at that, and you knock on it, right? And you realize it's ginormous weight and size. And then you go and you think of the Serapeum, and where these are bigger than this, and I just can't figure it out, man. I'm at a complete loss.
Oh, it's just insane. It's just crazy. But this is part of the thing with Egypt. It's unbelievable what they were doing in terms of size when they were building or carving stone, and whether it's sarcophagi or obelisk, one-piece solid obelisk.
Red granite.
It's just incredible. I was thinking, you go to Constantinople, Istanbul, modern Istanbul, and there's an obelisk there that was imported from Egypt, not even particularly large, and it's absolutely incredible. Then there's another obelisk that was built on site. Well, that was built, 1,000 or so years later. I forget exactly how old it is now, but it's much later than the Egyptian obelisk. And at that point, they couldn't carve one solid piece of stone. They had to cobble this together with a bunch of stones. Versus the Egyptians, they would carve these things from one solid piece of stone.
Now,
whether it's the obelisk or a sarcophagus or whatever, it's incredible.
Well, you're a geologist. When you look at these granite sarcophagus and you look at the hieroglyphics that are carved into them, I don't care what year it was done. I don't care if it was done in 2015 or 2500 BC, 2400, 2000 BC. How is it possible to carve such precise inscriptions into those granite? It wasn't done with copper. It wasn't done with chicken bones.
No. This is a real problem. How were they carving these things? On some of the sarcophagi, and hopefully they're still on display. I'll show it to everyone when we go there. You can actually see saw marks. So they were sawing granite, which is really incredible. Then there's other granite where it has this incredibly beautiful polish and sheen to it, so somehow they were working it that way. You have inscriptions on some of them which are absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, as you say, and you have to ask, how did they carve them? How did they get such beautiful hieroglyphics and whatnot? Then you have other sarcophagi, and I think of one that I show people, and it seems quite evident that the inscription on it, which is a genuine ancient inscription, I have no doubt, is much later than what it's being inscribed on. So again, this ties in with what I was talking about before, where they were reusing things. So in some cases, they've got something much older, and they're reusing it 4,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. So you have to be careful sometimes, because especially at Saqqara, I believe there's a lot of evidence that you have much, much, much older structures and much, much, much older antiques, more or less things that were ancient to the dynastic Egyptians 4,500, 4,700 years ago.
Let's take a break right here, Dr. Schoch, and when we come back, let's what's next on our list of the sarcophagus in Alexandria. We'll do speaking.
Right, ties right in.
Nice segue there, Doctor. Well done. Well done. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal God, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
What can I say about the most popular tea on the internet? And what do customers say about Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com? A lot. But by federal law, we at GetTheTea.com cannot make claims to how this product can enhance your health. We cannot even post our testimonies without being in compliance. So how do we get past the hump? Try our products at GetTheTea.com and see for yourself. You can send us a testimony, but we just can't post it. Bummer. Our products are GMO-free and organic. We pride ourselves in being the best we can be, and we urge you to take charge of your health. We're 11 years strong, and many of our customers have shared their successes with friends and family. Protect your colon. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Gobekli Tepe.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by Bearing Optics. That's right. That's what I use. Night vision goggles. You can go and click on the banners right now. We just got back from ESETI, and nothing like having night vision and watching all of our friends up there. It's pretty amazing. Contact Alec Hoffman, and the information is right there at jimmychurchradio.com. Dr. Schoch, speaking of that, have you ever looked up to the skies with night vision goggles and tried to see something?
No, I haven't actually.
Oh.
I have to do that. Yeah, you got me there. I've never used night vision goggles.
You've seen all of the, and heard the reports of it.
Yeah,
it's a life-changing experience. The first time, you're invited. Next time you and I get together, we're going out. We're going out.
That
you, Katie, and I, and Rita. You know how long it takes you to see something strange? 5 seconds.
Probably not long.
No,
Yeah.
5 seconds. And it's a guarantee, too. It's just amazing.
I look forward to it. That sounds fun, yeah.
You've got to do it with us, and we will. We will. So this sarcophagus that was found in Alexandria, going back to what we were talking about, the weight, the size of these things.
Oh yeah, that was the estimate was about 27 to 30 tons. I mean that that's not a minor thing, and this was not a. When it comes right down to it, a particularly large sarcophagus by Egyptian standards that we were talking about was a few meters long and a couple meters tall, and say 6 feet tall, 9 feet or so long, 9 or 10 feet long, and when you're talking a solid granite sarcophagus, when I say solid, made out of granite with very, very thick walls on it. This is not a minor thing.
No, and what was fascinating for me was watching the video of them struggling with all of the modern technology that we have, struggling with this thing, and what they had to do to get the top of it off and to clear it out, and to think about go back to 300 BC, and apparently they're moving these things around like they were nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. How were they doing it back then? We have such a hard time with it now. And that's 300 BC. And when you go back further in time, this is one of the classic aspects of Egypt, which, the classic Egyptologists don't have a good explanation for. As you go further back in time, things tend to get larger. They tend to become even more technologically difficult, should we say. And you would normally expect things to go the other way. That starts out primitive and then gets larger, more sophisticated. We have the opposite in Egypt. So really we're looking at 300 or Ptolemaic period, the end of what we think of as Egyptian civilization, not the beginning, with that sarcophagus in Alexandria, and still absolutely amazing.
How much have we actually discovered? And I know you've contemplated this.
Oh, in Egypt?
Yeah.
I'll put maybe 5 to 10%.
Right.
Liberally, maybe. There's a lot to discover in Egypt, and there's a couple of issues when it comes to that. And I'm a geologist, geophysicist, so there's a lot of, and this may sound crude and trite, but there's a lot of sand there. There's a lot of silt Nile there, which has covered things up. And yet, even though so much has been buried and covered up, and we know that, when I say we know that, because wherever you dig in Egypt, you're going to find something, it seems. Wherever you do geophysics, you start picking up things. Now with Google and satellite imagery and those types of techniques, remote sensing, we can pick up more and more things. I do want to stress, though, because I get people sending me stuff all the time. Oh, here's this and that and everything. You always have to ground check. So you really, things can be misleading from satellite photographs. But there's a lot there to find. But the second aspect is not just is there a lot there to find. In Egypt, there's so much on the surface already that it's overwhelming. And then it's been overwhelming for Egyptologists for the last couple of centuries. So most Egyptologists, they specialize in one small field, be it a geographic field or a certain time period, etc. And there's so much on the surface for them to study that's a lifetime of work to begin with, much less to discover something new. The Egyptian government, in some cases, basically discourages people from discovering new things because they can't deal with what they've got already.
What's stopping, there's ground penetrating radar, you have LIDAR and other things that could be applied with aircraft, and this Muon project, what is just stopping a massive Giza plateau all the way to Saqqara, right? It just finding out what's underneath the sand. We have the technology. Why not just do it?
Well, I would say there's two things. One, you've got the Egyptian authorities, and they have to approve anything, and ultimately it becomes a military issue in some cases because, they're sensitive about things, and there's military aspects to it. I mean, I'm being very pragmatic here. Right by Giza, there is a military base, et cetera, so there's other issues involved besides antiquities. That's number one. And number two, it's money. Any of these techniques cost a lot of money. To do them right, you need to get the equipment out there. You need to have all the proper specialized technicians for the equipment. It would take me forever just to operate one piece of equipment. You need a massive number of people to do that. Then you need a lot of processing power with supercomputers for some of this because you get so much data coming in. That's something that is a big factor, for instance, with the Scan Pyramids Muon project. It's not just collecting the data, but it's processing the data, which is very, very expensive and time-consuming. Building equipment in some cases just to process that data and make sense out of it. So there's a lot of practical aspects. But no, it could be done. It could absolutely be done. And it's amazing to me, people dump money into all kinds of frivolous things. When I say dump money, I mean, people put millions of dollars into other things. I think here we have a situation where we could learn so much, and so much not just for its own sake because ancient Egypt and antiquity is important and interesting, but because I think we could learn things that could apply to the present day.
Well, when we look at and I was so fascinated with the mapping that was done over Guatemala and the Honduras and all of the structures that were found and the highway systems that were buried under the jungle canopy there. We had no idea, right?
No, we had no idea. But that is a different thing to penetrate versus sand.
Right,
so
right.
There are different issues involved. And sometimes jungle canopy. I'm not trying to make excuses for Egypt, but it's sometimes easier to penetrate that than sand. And of course, you're in a different situation. I mean, you can't just put things into Egyptian airspace without getting all the proper permission.
Right, but the mentality behind it is what I'm suggesting here.
There's also a mentality, and I've known many Egyptians, with all due respect, who really don't care much about dynastic Egypt because I think we may have talked about this before. If it's pre-Muslim for some Egyptians, it's not a high priority, should we say.
Wow.
So you get, there's religious aspects to it. Well, we have it in this country also.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people couldn't care less about Native American burial mounds, etc.
Is that reason enough? Well, here's the $1 million question, and it really comes down to this. I feel that information is being suppressed. I'm just being very straightforward here. The question is, why suppress the knowledge? We know that they're holding back or that they don't want to go and find out things. Why suppress it? That's the question.
Politics and religion.
That's it? That simple?
I think it's that simple in some cases. I think it's politics, religion, and vested interests. When I say vested interests, I mean, how many, and I don't want to sound, really don't want to sound the wrong way, but I certainly know in many fields of academia that people have vested interests that, if they've built their career on one thing, they don't want to be told they were wrong. They don't want to have to rewrite their own books or rethink their own doctrines, their own hypotheses, etc. So you have it at that level. You have strong religious interest in some cases. I have been attacked by both Christians and Muslims, not physically attacked, but verbally attacked for pushing civilization back, for pushing back the age of the Sphinx. People who tell me, I'm saying the Sphinx is older than the world is. That's the extreme, but you know that a lot of people have very strong feelings about things.
Well, we have, Gobekli Tepe. Let's just call it like it is. Gobekli Tepe wasn't supposed to exist, and
No, it wasn't supposed to exist, and the Sphinx wasn't supposed to have any incarnation, any existence in any form whatsoever. Because just to make clear for the audience who hasn't heard this before, I pushed the day of the Sphinx back much earlier, back to about 10,000 BC, but it wasn't the Sphinx that we see today. It was not the dynastic head we see. It was actually a lioness, and the head has been recarved, so it didn't look the way it does today. But that was incredible heresy in academic circles. People tried to have me fired, et cetera, and Gobekli Tepe, which was found a number of years later and excavated even later and really came on the scene, is the same period and equally sophisticated and goes back to that same period and is absolutely evidence, in my opinion, that what I've been talking about long before it was discovered is true. It's corroborating evidence. It's confirming what I've been saying.
Well, Lerner said at the big conference, he said, give me evidence of another civilization pushing things back to 10,000 BC. And then, had Gobekli Tepe been around and discovered in 1990, 1991, your position would have been completely different.
It would have been completely different, and I wouldn't have suffered all the abuse I suffered at the time. And now, look at what's happened. Part of the answer to the question you just posed, even though we now have Gobekli Tepe, have some of those people changed their position? Not significantly. They want to sort of brush Gobekli Tepe under the rug and still say, well, that doesn't apply somehow. Oh, it's not really that sophisticated. They can't dismiss it, but they can try to ignore it. Zai Hawass literally has said that he doesn't know anything about Gobekli Tepe, so if he doesn't know about it, apparently it doesn't count as evidence.
I can't believe and that's on video. I cannot believe those words came out of his mouth.
I know. So, this is the level that we're talking about. This is the level of people we're talking about in some cases, and I sound like I'm being very harsh. I guess I am, but you have to say it the way it is. It's ridiculous. I don't want to get into politics. I was going to say certain people have been inventing their own, quote, truth, unquote, long before Trump, I guess.
Oh, ow, 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 ouch, ouch. Okay, everybody, send all of your email to Robert Schoch. Okay, see, now, but this is, I think.
But you know what I'm saying.
I do.
You just. Sometimes people just make up things.
Well, the bigger picture is quite simply this: that if evidence was revealed of a prior society and civilization, a high technical civilization before 3000 BC, then that changes everything. That changes the Bible. That changes religious aspects. That changes every book that has ever been written, all of the curriculum being taught in schools, and geopolitics and everything else has to change. And the earth would shift on its axis. It would be that monumental. And quite possibly that is the big issue here.
Exactly. It really changes how people have to view things.
Everything.
The implications, mind-boggling, I think, that's why people are so resistant, and that's why they want to ignore evidence, they want to ignore data, they don't want to accept it, they want to keep their old worldview. And you can't do it and be compatible with real evidence.
And let's go back in its totality with everything that we have discussed tonight. When we talk about the Muon Project and the electromagnetic research, and which goes right into, in my opinion, the electric universe, and I'm glad that you brought that up. All of this now was starting to collide. Science is overlapping our community so much these days that something is going to break here, Robert. Something is going to bust wide open.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think we're going to, how do I say this? We're going through a paradigm change. We're going through, I don't know if you know Thomas Kuhn, the great physicist historian who talked about revolutions in science. I think we're seeing that. We're just going to have to give up the old paradigm and go into a new one.
When we talk about all of this, and then we bring in, there's another key here, and I'm talking about Edfu, and what is represented there, and that story also corroborates other historians from the past, some of the theories of today, and it brings in the big A word. And
I knew you were going
well,
there.
but it's there.
I mean, you know, and I will say the A word now. I wouldn't say it 30 years ago, I suppose. Well, not suppose. I know I wouldn't say it 30 years ago out in public because, again, this was something that if you start talking about Atlantis being the A word in this context, you were dismissed by standard academia. But to me, the concept of Atlantis, not as a geographic location, not as a geographic position, but the concept of Atlantis as an advanced civilization that goes back to the period of about 10,000 BC. Plato, according to Plato's chronology, it collapsed about 9600 BC, which is right at the end of the last ice age by modern dating. It ties in perfectly with what we now know from genuine archaeological and geological evidence. So I think we have to relook at that, and I don't care if some of my academic colleagues find that crazy. That's where the evidence is going.
Well, and when we talk about the possibility of great floods or catastrophes and these things around the world, and everybody has got a flood myth, every culture, doesn't matter where you go, everybody's got a flood myth story. And when we back up off of the last ice age, when everything started to melt and sea levels rose, there's the possibility of each one of these cultures around the world experiencing their own flood story, and that's where it all comes from. But with the talk of Atlantis predated the Edfu discovery. And when you look at those texts, now you put that in, and it's another piece of evidence here that explains a lot, not only the technology of Egypt, but some of these stories that go back around the world with all of these cultures. And to me, it starts to complete the puzzle. I think Edfu right there, Edfu, and it's dismissed. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, and Edfu is incredible. It's essentially one of the places that we go and visit, and it's essentially a book in stone, as it's sometimes described, all over the temple, and it talks about this. And again, the problem is that so many academics, Egyptologists, they just dismiss this as nonsense. They call it mythology or whatever, and they just dismiss it. But we're finding there's a real basis for it.
The evidence, I want to close on this. The evidence when we look at the Great Pyramid, we can all make jokes that, Khufu, Cheops didn't put his name on the pyramid. But the greatest monument, the greatest construction ever in the history of the world, but you don't put your name on it. I think there's
which
a lot
is a little crazy.
But there's
one
a lot.
could argue.
Well,
he was anonymous. He wanted to stay anonymous, and it's also interesting that there's not much in the way of. Not only are there no inscriptions, but there's not much in the way of direct evidence in the sense of statues of him or anything else. The only statuette that we now have is a little ivory carving of him, which you can see, at least it was on display in the Egyptian Museum, tiny little thing, and that's supposed to represent Khufu, and it's not even clear that that was carved in his lifetime. In fact, it may have been 1,000 years later. It may just be a copy. There were repeatedly on the Sinai some carvings of him on some of the walls, but they were destroyed. But yeah, there's very little. It's strange.
No, well, and I can explain it. You ready?
Okay. Yep.
The pyramid was built before hieroglyphics. That's why.
Yeah, they didn't.
They didn't have it.
They were using something more sophisticated.
Computers. They didn't need to carve into the walls.
Well, yeah, I'm joking a little bit about some of this, but maybe it's not a joke. We don't know.
I know.
How much right now? I don't know what the percentage is. How much is in print in the last, say, 5 years versus just in electronic, digital format in cyberspace?
I can't wait.
You see my point?
I do.
There
I can't wait
is so
to find
much
out.
that doesn't actually exist in print. It's cyberspace. It's just on the internet. And if all that goes down, it'll be lost.
Well,
I mean, that's one reason I like to have published books still, physical paper copies stored somewhere. But so much, never exists on paper, never exists physically in our modern day and age.
Yeah, when you think about it, if you jump 10,000 years into the future and somebody from the future finds a CD. Right,
they'll be worthless.
Worthless. They would. What? How are they going to figure that out?
Well, they're not going to figure it out. Number one, and number two, it'll probably be so degraded that even if they figure it out, they'll get very little information off of it.
That's right, and we have the same problems today. If they found a CD is one thing, but how about a CD player? Right, without the CD, and they don't have the instruction manual, then right. Well, we have the same problems with the Giza Plateau. We don't have those. We don't have the instruction manual.
Or forget a CD player or CD. How about a little thumb drive, no bigger than your fingernail?
They wouldn't know, and it could have all of the information of our history, but they would never know it. And we have the same problems today with Giza in Egypt. Dr. Schoch, thank you so much for everything. You've got the tour coming up next year in 2019.
2019, did I get it right? June 2019. I invite people to come see what we've been talking about, see it in person. I mean, there's no substitute for seeing it in person.
And what's left for you in 2018? Are you speaking? Any appearances?
Yeah, I've got some appearances that are coming up every month, I think, September, October, November. I suggest that people go to my website, robertschoch.com. And for people that don't know how to spell my name, it's Robert the normal way, Robert, last name SCHOCH.com.
Thank you so much, my friend. Give my best to Katie. And thank you. It's just another wonderful conversation here on Fade to Black with you. Really
it's always great to be on.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Always enjoy it.
Enjoy the rest of your morning.
That's right. It is morning now here.
I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
Robert M. Schoch. It's robertschoch.com. And you've got to go, if you can, you've got to go to Egypt with him. robertschoch.com. All the information is right there. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back with open lines right after this. Stay with me.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, Gobekli Tepe. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Gobekli Tepe.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And I have lost the internet. I've got one stage of the internet going out. I have nothing coming back in, so I don't have any phones. And I don't even know if you can hear me right now. So with that, I'm just going to have to wrap the show tonight. And I don't want to do this. I rebooted computers and everything during the break, and hoping that things were going to fix themselves, and they did not. I am really bummed out about this. So with that, I am just going to wrap the show. I'm going to try and get right now. I got nothing. I've got nothing. So that's it. I got to thank Robert Schoch for coming in tonight. Absolutely amazing conversation, and I'm glad that it made it to the end. So we did get through that. But with that, I'm just going to wrap the show. And if you can hear me right now, I don't want you to be bummed out. It's just the way that it is. So let's go ahead and wrap. That's right. I'm going to do this. It was an amazing show with Robert Schoch. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hill J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster Drew the Geek. Music Doug Aldridge. Intro Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. It's broadcast owned and copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Tomorrow night, right here on Fade to Black, Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Until then, everybody be safe. Gobekli Tepe.